The Outsiders, Chapter 9, Part 2. Our gang never went in for weapons. We're just not that rough. The only weapons we ever used were knives, and shoot, we carried them mostly just for looks. Like Two-Bit with his black-handled switch. None of us had ever really hurt anybody or wanted to. Just Johnny, and he hadn't wanted to. "Hey, Curtis," Tim yelled. I jumped. "Which one?" I heard Soda yell back. "The big one. Come on over here." The guy from Brumley looked at me. What did I tell you? I watched Derry going toward Tim and the leader of the Brumley boys. He shouldn't be here, I thought suddenly. I shouldn't be here, and Steve shouldn't be here, and Soda shouldn't be here, and Two-Bit shouldn't be here. We're greasers but not hoods, and we don't belong with this bunch of future convicts. We could end up like them, I thought. We could. And the thought didn't help my headache. I went back to stand with Soda and Steve and Two-Bit then because the Socs were arriving, right on time. They came in 4 carloads and filed out silently. I counted 22 of them. There were 20 of us, so I figured the odds were as even as we could get them. Derry always liked to take on 2 at a time anyway. They looked like they were all cut from the same piece of cloth, clean-shaven with semi-beetle haircuts, wearing striped or checkered shirts with light red or tan-colored jackets or Madras ski jackets. They could just as easily have been going to the movies as to a rumble. That's why people don't ever think to blame the Socs and are always ready to jump on us. We look hoody and they look decent. It could be just the other way around. Half of the hoods I know are pretty decent guys underneath all that grease. And from what I've heard, a lot of the Socs are just cold-blooded mean, but people usually go by looks. They lined up silently facing us, and we lined up facing them. I looked for Randy, but didn't see him. I hoped he wasn't there. A guy with a Madras shirt stepped up. "Let's get the rules straight. Nothing but our fists, and the first to run lose, right?" Tim flipped away his beer can. "You savvy real good." There was an uneasy silence. Who was going to start it? Derry solved the problem. He stepped forward under the circle of light made by the street lamp. For a minute everything looked unreal, like a scene out of a J.D. movie or something. Then Derry said, "I'll take on anyone." He stood there, tall, broad-shouldered, his muscles taut under his t-shirt and his eyes glittering like ice. For a second it looked like there wasn't anyone brave enough to take him on. Then there was a slight stir in the faceless mob of Socs, and a husky blond guy stepped forward. He looked at Derry and said quietly, "Hello, Darryl." Something flickered behind Derry's eyes, and then they were ice again. "Hello, Paul." I heard Soda give kind of a squeak, and I realized the blonde was Paul Holden. He had been the best halfback on Derry's football team at high school, and he and Derry used to buddy it around all the time. He must be a junior in college by now, I thought. He was looking at Derry with an expression I couldn't quite place but disliked. Contempt, pity, hate, all 3. Why? Because Derry was standing there representing all of us, and maybe Paul felt only contempt and pity and hate for greasers? Derry hadn't moved a muscle or changed expression, but you could see he hated Paul now. It wasn't only jealousy. Derry had a right to be jealous. He was ashamed to be on our side. Ashamed to be seen with the Brumley boys, Shepard's gang, maybe even us. Nobody realized it but me and Soda. It didn't matter to anyone but me and Soda. That's stupid, I thought swiftly. They've both come here to fight, and they're both supposed to be smarter than that. What difference does the side make? Then Paul said, "I'll take you," and something like a smile crossed Derry's face. I knew Derry had thought he could take Paul any time, but that was 2 or 3 years ago. What if Paul was better now? I swallowed. Neither one of my brothers had ever been beaten in a fight, but I wasn't exactly itching for someone to break the record. They moved in a circle under the light, counterclockwise, eyeing each other, sizing each other up, maybe remembering old faults and wondering if they were still there. The rest of us waited with mounting tension. I was reminded of Jack London's books, where the wolf pack waits in silence for one of 2 members to go down in a fight. But it was different here. The moment either one swung a punch, the rumble would be on. The silence grew heavier, and I could hear the harsh, heavy breathing of the boys around me. Still Derry and the Socs walked slowly in a circle. Even I could feel their hatred. They used to be buddies, I thought. They used to be friends, and now they hate each other because one has to work for a living, and the other comes from the west side. They shouldn't hate each other. I don't hate the Socs anymore. They shouldn't hate. "Hold up," a familiar voice yelled. "Hold it." Derry turned to see who it was, and Paul swung, a hard right to the jaw that would have felled anyone but Derry. The rumble was on. Dallas Winston ran to join us. I couldn't find a Soc my size, so I took the next best and jumped on him. Dallas was right there beside me, already on top of someone. "I thought you were in the hospital," I yelled as the Soc knocked me to the ground and I rolled to avoid getting kicked. I was. Dally was having a hard time because his left arm was still in bad shape. I ain't now. "How?" I managed to ask as the Soc I was fighting leaped on me and we rolled near Dally. "Talk the nurse into it with 2 bits switch. Don't you know a rumble ain't a rumble unless I'm in it?" I couldn't answer because the Soc, who was heavier than I took him for, had me pinned and was slugging the sense out of me. I thought dizzily that he was going to knock some of my teeth loose or break my nose or something. and I knew I didn't have a chance. But Derry was keeping an eye out for me. He caught that guy by the shoulder and half lifted him up before knocking him 3 feet with a sledgehammer blow. I decided it would be fair for me to help Dally since he could only use one arm. They were slugging it out, but Dallas was getting the worst of it, so I jumped on his Socha's back, pulling his hair and pounding him. He reached back and caught me by the neck and threw me over his head to the ground. Tim Shepard, who was fighting two at once, accidentally stepped on me, knocking my breath out. I was up again as soon as I got my wind and jumped right back on the Soch, trying my best to strangle him. While he was prying my fingers loose, Dally knocked him backwards so that all 3 of us rolled on the ground, gasping, cussing, and punching. Somebody kicked me hard in the ribs, and I yelped in spite of myself. Some Soch had knocked out one of our bunch and was kicking me as hard as he could, but I had both arms wrapped around the other Soch's neck and refused to let go. Dally was slugging him, and I hung on desperately, although that other Soch was kicking me, and you'd better believe it hurt. Finally, he kicked me in the head so hard it stunned me, and I lay limp, trying to clear my mind and keep from blacking out. I could hear the racket, but only dimly through the buzzing in my ears. Numerous bruises along my back and on my face were throbbing, but I felt detached from the pain, as if it wasn't really me feeling it. "They're running," I heard a voice yell joyfully. "Look at the dirty... Run!" It seemed to me that voice belonged to Two-Bit, but I couldn't be sure. I tried to sit up and saw that the Sochas were getting into their cars and leaving. Tim Shepard was swearing blue and green because his nose was broken again, and the leader of the Brumley boys was working over one of his own men because he had broken the rules and used a piece of pipe in the fighting. Steve lay doubled up and groaning about 10 feet from me. We found out later that he had 3 broken ribs. Soda Pop was beside him, talking in a low, steady voice. I did a double take when I saw Two-Bit. Blood was streaming down one side of his face, and one hand was busted wide open. But he was grinning happily because the Sochas were running. "We won," Derry announced in a tired voice. He was going to have a black eye, and there was a cut across his forehead. "We beat the Sochas." Dally stood beside me quietly for a minute, trying to grasp the fact that we had really beaten the Sochas. Then, grabbing my shirt, he hauled me to my feet. "Come on." He half dragged me down the street. "We're going to see Johnny." I tried to run, but stumbled, and Dally impatiently shoved me along. "Hurry. He was getting worse when I left. He wants to see you." I don't know how Dallas could travel so fast and hard after being knocked around and having his sore arm hurt some more, but I tried to keep up with him. Track wasn't ever like running I did that night. I was still dizzy and had only a dim realization of where I was going and why. Dally had Buck Merrill's T-Bird parked in front of our house, and we hopped into it. I sat tight as Dally roared the car down the street. We were on the 10th when a siren came on behind us, and I saw the reflection of the red light flashing in the windshield. "Look sick," Dally commanded. "I'll say I'm taking you to the hospital, which will be truth enough." I leaned against the cold glass of the window and tried to look sick, which wasn't too hard feeling the way I did right then. The policeman looked disgusted. "All right, buddy, where's the fire?" "The kid," Dally jerked a thumb toward me. "He fell over on his motorcycle, and I'm taking him to the hospital." I groaned, and it wasn't all fake out. I guess I looked pretty bad, too, being cut and bruised like I was. The fuzz changed his tone. "Is he real bad? Do you need an escort?" "How would I know if he's bad or not? I ain't no doc." "Yeah, we could use an escort." And as the policeman got back into his car, I heard Dally hiss, "Sucker." With the siren ahead of us, we made record time getting to the hospital. All the way there, Dally kept talking and talking about something, but I was too dizzy to make out most of it. I was crazy, you know that, kid? Crazy for wanting Johnny to stay out of trouble, for not wanting him to get hard. If he'd been like me, he'd never have been in this mess. If he'd got smart like me, he'd never have run into people at church. That's what you get for helping people. Editorials in the paper and a lot of trouble. You better wise up, Pony. You get tough like me and you don't get hurt. You look out for yourself and nothing can touch you. He said a lot more stuff, but I didn't get it all. I had a stupid feeling that Dally was out of his mind, the way he kept raving on, because Dallas never talked like that. But I think now I would have understood if I hadn't been sick at the time. The cop left us at the hospital as Dally pretended to help me out of the car. The minute the cop was gone, Dally let go of me so quick I almost fell. "Hurry!" We ran through the lobby and crowded past people into the elevator. Several people yelled at us, I think because we were pretty racked up looking. But Dally had nothing on his mind except Johnny, and I was too mixed up to know anything but that I had to follow Dally. When we finally got to Johnny's room, the doctor stopped us. "I'm sorry, boys, but he's dying." "We gotta see him," Dally said, and we flicked out Two-Bit's switchblade. His voice was shaking. "We're gonna see him, and if you give me any static, you'll end up on your own operating table." The doctor didn't bat an eye. "You can see him, but it's because you're his friends, not because of that knife." Dally looked at him for a second, then put the knife back in his pocket. We both went into Johnny's room, standing there for a second, getting our breath back in heavy gulps. It was awful quiet. It was scary quiet. I looked at Johnny. He was very still, and for a moment I thought in agony, he's dead already. We're too late. Dally swallowed, wiping the sweat off his upper lip. Johnny Cake, he said in a hoarse voice. Johnny? Johnny stirred weakly, then opened his eyes. He managed softly. We won, Dally panted. We beat the Socias. We stomped them, chased them out of our territory. Johnny didn't even try to grin at him. Useless. Fighting's no good. He was awful white. Dally licked his lips nervously. They're still writing editorials about you in the paper for being a hero and all. He was talking too fast and too calmly. Yeah, they're calling you a hero now and heroizing all the greasers. We're all proud of you, buddy. Johnny's eyes glowed. Dally was proud of him. That was all Johnny had ever wanted. Pony Boy. I barely heard him. I came closer and leaned over to hear what he was going to say. Stay gold, Pony Boy. Stay gold. The pillow seemed to sink a little, and Johnny died. You read about people looking peacefully asleep when they're dead, but they don't. Johnny just looked dead, like a candle with the flame gone. I tried to say something, but I couldn't make a sound. Dally swallowed and reached over to push Johnny's hair back. Never could keep that hair back. That's what you get for trying to help people, you little punk. That's what you get. Whirling suddenly, he slammed back against the wall, his face contracted in agony, and sweat streamed down his face. Damn it, Johnny, he begged, slamming one fist against the wall, hammering it to make it obey his will. Oh, damn it, Johnny, don't die. Please don't die. He suddenly bolted through the door and down the hall.